Hello. My name is Jana Roschker. I'm a professor of sinology and expert in Chinese philosophy at the University of Ljubljana, for those who don't know me. And I will today, I would like to present an issue that is very important in my view for the understanding of Confucianism. And since Confucianism is one of the main pillars of the Chinese ideational tradition, it is also important for understanding not only traditional but also contemporary China. So this is about an issue, as I mentioned, that I regard as important, and therefore it also represents one of the most important or one of the most relevant topics that I also present in my in the beginning of my teaching of Chinese philosophy. It is the topic that is connected to the necessity of differentiating between two currents within Confucianism, because which we can name roughly or a little bit simplified as philosophical and political Confucianism, although the borders between them are often somehow blurred. It is still very important that we can grasp with the implications of this differentiation, and that we do not try to deal with Confucianism as with a kind of monolithic ideational building. So I will, in my presentation, I will first introduce this distinction between political and philosophical Confucianism and its consequences, its implications for our understanding of traditional and contemporary China. And in the second part of my presentation, I will try to illuminate the nature of the relation between these two central currents of Confucianism through the application of analytical method that I'm developing, and I call it preliminary the method of sublation. So we can proceed by illuminating or by asking ourselves the question, why is it so easily possible that Confucianism has been so easily misused or reinterpreting in a very problematic way by the contemporary ideologists of the People's Republic of China. And it is, of course, possible because Confucianism is a very complex ideational building. It is a philosophical discourse on the one side, and on the second, and on the other side, prescriptive ideology, prescriptive state doctrine, and mixing up these two different discourses within Confucianism makes it very easy to misinterpret it. So in this connection, we could also ask ourselves if this distinction, or how this distinction, can help us clarify the often asked questions of the combination of hierarchy and mobility, or autocracy and freedom, or rigidity and flexibility in Confucianism. So in this context, I also emphasize the need to reevaluate the role of the Confucian legacy in its manifold transformations by analyzing different traditional Chinese interpretations derived from Confucian intellectual history. So only with an internally grasped awareness of these differentiations within Confucianism can we evaluate what many sociologists have hastily categorized as a meta-Confucian pattern, which is a characterization that often lacks thorough consideration of the historical dimensions that underlie Confucian political and philosophical theories. So how was this the distinction between these two very different forms of Confucian thought developed? We can see that when we browse in this presentation very briefly over the most important developmental phases in the history of Confucianism. So Confucianism has been developed in the 6th and 5th century, mainly by Confucian and also by two of his most important, most influential followers, Xunzi and Mengzi. We all know that, and we don't have to go into differences between them. But Confucianism, this original Confucianism that was developed in the so-called axial age, of course, was a deontological ethics, a very pragmatic ethics, and it pertained to early philosophical discourses of the Chinese tradition. So, and it, of course, lasted, this original Confucianism lasted or was influential among other philosophical schools until the beginning of the Qin dynasty, in which, as we all know, all these schools of philosophy were forbidden, their books were burned, and so on, and the only legitimate philosophy ideology that was, or a system, ideational system that was allowed and also supported in this Qin dynasty was the philosophy of legalism, which, of course, as we know, has mainly served the interests of centralized leader. So, but this, of course, the Qin dynasty only lasted 15 years, and after that it was defeated by the Han dynasty. But the Han dynasty, of course, was still a very large state which needed to be governed in a centralistic manner, and it needed therefore also a quite rigid and strict state doctrine, which was made then by the court ideologists, especially by Dong Zhongshu, who has managed to incorporate, he took Confucianism, the Confucian framework, when he developed this new state doctrine, and he incorporated many legalist elements into this so-called Confucian framework. And so this original philosophy, original ethics was transformed into a state doctrine, into this other form of Confucianism. And this state doctrine was, of course, later on underpinned ideologically by not ideologically, institutionally, by the implementation of the official state exams, where the successful candidates had to master all the formal aspects of the Confucian teachings, and the success at this examination, as we know, has opened the candidates the path or the door to political and to um, power, and also to economic power. And how did actually Dong Zhongshu succeed to incorporate latently? Of course, openly he could not do it, because legalism, I mean, the Han Dynasty could not adopt legalism because it was the ideology of the defeated. So how could he manage to incorporate these many of the very rigid legalist elements into this Confucian framework? He managed it by interpreting original Confucian teachings through the lens of Xunzi, who is often regarded as a bridge between Confucianism and legalism. And then this the Confucian state doctrine became part of the official state examination, which was the institutional groundwork of this new Confucian state doctrine. And these exams did not require from the candidates any critical thinking, but only the mastering of this formal framework of Confucian teachings, which had the consequence that all the scholars in the next centuries actually found Confucianism as these contents of the state exams very boring, because they were not supposed to think critically about it. So for the intellectual satisfaction, they have turned more to the philosophies of Buddhism and the Taoism, which makes it very, very challenging for Confucianism as a state doctrine. It was this fact was intimidating somehow, because it is never nice if state doctrine, state ideology is found to be so boring by the most intellectuals. So also Buddhism and Taoism were, of course, very intimidating. They were dangerous, and this was the background of the second reform of Confucianism, which happened during the Sung and Ming dynasties, and this was the so-called Neo-Confucian movement, which with its main proponents Jushi, who managed to incorporate, again latently, because openly he criticized Buddhism and Taoism, but latently he managed to incorporate most of the very important philosophical elements of Buddhism and Taoism into the framework of Confucian philosophy again. And he succeeded to do that by leaning on the Mencian interpretation of the Confucian teaching. And this stream of thought, which was oriented towards this Mencian interpretation, was later on also developed further by the proponents of the modern New Confucianism. And this movement represents a third reform of Confucianism, which took place in the early 20th century. We all know that modern New Confucianism, tried to modernize the Chinese tradition by reviving several concepts of their own tradition. Especially those that were important also in the Western theory, in the Western Enlightenment, and the theory that underlaid the Western modernization. These were the concepts of subjectivity and reason. And this modernization of this Neo-Confucian moral metaphysics took place in modern Confucianism through a continuous dialogue with the Western thought. Be as it may, this very short presentation of the most important developmental phases of Confucianism has showed to us that what we are dealing here are two very different currents of Confucian teachings, which could be denoted as political Confucianism on one hand, the state doctrine on one hand, and on the other hand, the ontological ethics that was later developed into the moral metaphysics. And they were based on Xunzi and Mengzi, respectively, and they are also reflected in two different interpretations of original Confucianism of the spring and autumn annals, namely the Gongyang and the Guliang interpretation. So the first one, the state doctrine, serves as the basis for institutionalized Confucian state doctrine and fixed normative ethics characterized by a stringent vertical hierarchy, gerontocracy, discrimination against various marginalized groups, including women, social uniformity, and the suppression of individual autonomy. So in contrast, the philosophical Confucianism manifests itself as a dynamic and adaptable framework, constantly re-examining diverse philosophical questions, valuing social diversity, and rejecting dogmatism and autocratic rules. So here we are now confronted with this differentiation, which facilitates for us to confront the challenge of reconciling the Confucian combination of autocracy and freedom, classification, ossification and flexibility, and dogmatism and openness. So, because as we all know, the indiscriminate and homogeneous view of Confucianism as the institutional basis of a monolithic civilization can obscure our understanding of the specific characteristics of Chinese modernization. So now, this leads us to the question of whether there might exist an overarching meta context of meaning that could connect both streams of Confucian thought we have just briefly analyzed, namely the philosophical and the political Confucianism, respectively, because the political Confucianism, as we all know, was eliminated as the institutional basis of the Chinese state, was eliminated in the process of modernization. But the Confucian ethics still persists, not only in significant and deeply rooted sediments of social ethics, but also in contemporary East Asian philosophical discourses. But some elements of the political Confucianism are also undergoing a resurgence within the current blend of capitalism and autocracy, particularly within the specific context of Chinese modernization. So now the core problem that comes into the foreground when we start observing Confucianism from this shared perspective appears to be the nature of the relation between these two currents. So I will try to illuminate the deep structure of this relation by applying the so-called method of sublation, of transcultural philosophical sublation. And this is a dialectical comparative approach which does not aim to uncover a singular true interpretation of the comparata under observation of these two objects of comparison, comparata, but its primary concern is to extract their relevance to our contemporary world and discern how they could assist us in resolving pressing issues and addressing intriguing questions of our time. So this method involves 8 phases. First, we establish research question, then we look for similarities between the two comparata, and then we look for differences, but not the differences between the two comparata, but rather the differences that are found within these similarities. And then we connect these differences. We look how these differences are connected to the referential frameworks that in which these two comparata are embedded, and this enables us to find the insufficiencies or deficiencies of both comparata. These are eliminated, and what is preserved are the vital elements of both comparata, and then we try to complement mutually the deficiencies of each of the comparata by the strong points or by the vital productive elements of the other. This tension between what we have eliminated and what we have preserved leads us to a shift in our thinking, which leads us then to a new idea or to a reply to our research question. So the research question we are posing here is, how does each form of the two Confucianisms conceptualize the role of the individual in relation to society and governance? So first, in the first phase, we look for the similarities, and maybe the 3 most striking similarities of the two comparata are that they both emphasize social harmony, hierarchy, and the cultivation, the inner cultivation of virtues. And now let's take a look how these similarities, what are the differences between the two comparata regarding these similarities. So they both, first of all, we said they both emphasize social harmony, but the philosophical Confucianism understands this social harmony mainly as a kind of diversity, while the political Confucianism, which is based on Xunzi, sees harmony mainly as unification. Then a similar difference we can find in the emphasis on hierarchy, which is present in both comparata, while the philosophical Confucianism understands this hierarchical order as structured or based on reciprocity. The political Confucianism, political Confucianism emphasize the vertical order and the structure of distinctions between social positions within in its interpretation of hierarchy. Then the third similarity is also different. The third similarity is virtues and cultivating them. It is something that is emphasized by both comparata, but the philosophical stream, which is based on Mencius, sees these virtues as something a priori, which just needs to be cultivated, whereas the Xunzian stream of political philosophy, of political theory within Confucianism, emphasizes that this virtue needs to be acquired, and we have to work against our inclinations if we want to cultivate or virtue. So now we connect these foundational differences with foundational frameworks and paradigms that underlie each of the comparata. So as we can see, the first framework is defined by the strong emphasis on pragmatic deontological ethics. The second referential frameworks in which this political Confucianism is embedded is based on power dynamics and social control. So we can now see what the shortcomings of each of the comparata is. The shortcoming of or flaw of the philosophical Confucianism can be found in the fact that it neglects political power or questions related to political power, and also social injustice. And the flaw of the second, of the political Confucianism, can be found in the fact that it stifles individual autonomy and justifies authoritarian governance. So in this respect, they could complement each other, namely the focus on ethics that is typical of the philosophical Confucianism can be complemented by the focus on governance and power and social order, which is emphasized in the political Confucianism, and vice versa. The practicality of political Confucianism that is typical of political Confucianism can ground many of the abstract ethical ideals that are typical of the political Confucianism. So the sublation now in the next phase can bring us to a shift that provides us with a balanced perspective that respects individual moral development and society and the needs of society, and which can also contribute to contemporary discussions on governance and ethics. So what could be, but this is, of course, we come through this to a concept of meritocratic system, and this meritocratic system has already we found in this sublation our way to a new possible Confucianism, which is based on governance that is moral as well as practical, and this is a meritocratic system that has already found its footing within a spectrum of Chinese ideologies, propaganda, and political theories in traditional and as well as contemporary dialogues. But the innovative notion that emerged at the culmination of the sublation process arises from a clear division established between the two comparata throughout this dialectical procedure. A contrastive analysis illuminates that in terms of conceptual framework, a notable resemblance exists between these two currents of Confucian thought and the traditional binary category of the empirical and transcendental subject, which manifests itself in the traditional concept, a category of the inner sage and the external ruler, nation Waiwang. So this insight lays the groundwork for a renewed examination of various theoretical models that employed this binary category. This binary category was first developed, mentioned by Zhuangzi, and then it was adopted by Confucianism, and it is still used in modern times, in contemporary times, by many scholars who are doing research in Confucian, in political theory, especially in Confucian political theory. But what is new is the fact that this binary category can also be applied to the research of Confucianism itself. as a political and philosophical theory. So many scholars, contemporary scholars, have been working on this theory, for instance, Tang Junyi and Mo Zhongsan, but also Li Zihou. I will not go into it now because of the time limitation. I have to conclude now, because what I would like to emphasize here is that the crystallization of this traditional Nation Waiwang category, inner sage, external ruler, that emerged from the sublation guided process of contrastive analysis was therefore not a mere coincidence. It has demonstrated with essential and pressing clarity that the exploration of meta-civilizational patterns needs the inclusion of the voices of the affected. So this entails a greater reliance on sources originating within the cultural tradition under examination. In the context of China, this means that comprehending the unique dynamics of Confucian, so-called Confucian combination of hierarchy and mobility is unattainable if we persist in the current practice of heavily relying on Western experts' perspective while disregarding scholarly materials in the native language of the culture we are studying. This applies not only to the contents of their studies, but perhaps even more importantly to their theoretical and conceptual frameworks, to the methodology they are using. And with this thought, I would like to conclude my presentation and to thank all of you for your patient listening. Thank you very much.